What's happening, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Park Lane Podcast. Actually, episode number 80, which once again is sponsored by our good friends at Manscaped. If you're new to the channel or you've never heard of Manscaped before, check them out on manscaped.com. They're a male grooming brand who offer a wide variety of products. You know, probably one of the biggest male grooming providers there is in the world. So go check them out if you want to buy a present for your dad, your brother, your other half, whoever it is. Everybody should get their products. They are genuinely really good. They sent me over some stuff recently, and I've got no complaints whatsoever. So head over to manscaped.com and use the code ParkLane20. That's ParkLane20 for 20% off plus free shipping. But anyway, now we've done all the formalities. Harry Scarf, how you doing, mate?
Good evening, Luke, and good evening to everyone else as well in the chat. No, very nice to be here. Obviously not in the ideal circumstances in terms of the men's team. But as we already see in the comments there, in terms of the women's team, it absolutely is. So I'm looking forward to getting into that. But yeah, hope everyone's well.
Yeah, definitely, mate. Exactly that. And, we will be discussing, not only the men's team, but also the women's team's success from the FA Cup semi-final today. So we will, leave the therapy session for a little bit, and we'll talk about the Newcastle game shortly. But before we get into any football chat, if you are new to the channel and you're watching us on YouTube or Twitch, make sure you click the follow button or the subscribe button. And please do watch all the way through because it really does help out and it is free to do so. It will help us, reach more people. And, that's what we really want to do. If you're listening on any podcast platform, just leave a 5-star review. And again, click the follow button. And again, listen all the way through. And really appreciate everybody's support on all the channels. So thank you for that. Right, Harry, let's crack into it today because today the Tottenham women's team, I don't really like saying Tottenham women's team, but sometimes you have to differentiate, right? Tottenham women's team beat Leicester 2-1 after extra time in the semi-final of the Women's FA Cup, which means there's a trip to Wembley on May the 12th, I believe, which actually I'm contemplating going down for, as it could be a good chance to see Spurs potentially lift a trophy. But what do you think of the game today? Because, I'm going to be honest with you, I don't watch too much of the women's game, but I was thoroughly impressed today.
Yeah, I was really impressed. And obviously I don't watch every week, but whenever, on BBC, etc., I always do try and watch. And I think we're a very exciting prospect under Robert Villeman, very similar in terms of the men's team, full of possession, full of chances. But in this game, it was kind of the worst possible start in terms of Leicester took the lead in the 12th minute. But Spurs, we just kept pushing, never gave up. And I think Robert got his subs absolutely spot on today. We'd like, for example, leaving Naz on up front with the pace she had, which led to the late equaliser in normal time, which sent it through, straight away to extra time. So it's credit to him for that, because I was one of those people going, Naz had been quite wasteful. She'd missed a couple of big chances. Why she's still on the pitch, but that's why he's a manager, Robert, and I'm not, because she stays on and she scores from a Leicester mistake, forces it to extra time. Martha Thomas, I think, like 118th minute. She loves scoring at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, so to get the winner was absolutely fantastic and absolutely deserved, because really in normal times Spurs could have won the game for me. There were so many big chances. Yeah. Leicester proper scrape through to that. So, as Ben says there in the chat, the total opposites for Spurs in terms of performances and results. But no, Spurs were very, very good, very worthy of the win. It should have been bigger. And history makers through to the final. So congratulations to Robert and his side.
Yeah, 100%. And as Holly has said, so am I. Burnley on Saturday, and then the final on the Sunday.
Sounds good.
Yeah, it's a crazy game because Spurs were really, really, really progressive with the ball. I really liked how progressive they were in terms of the risks that they took, which is very similar to the men's team. In terms of how they play the ball, one touch, quick passes around, and try and break through the lines. But we were really, really wasteful at times. And I did wonder if we'd ever score, but the Leicester goal was an absolute whiz bomber, as Holly would say. It was a great finish, and do you know what I really enjoyed, and I really want to discuss this with you actually, Harry, was how much I enjoyed watching that game and kind of being around social media whilst the game was going on, compared to what I do with the men's game. I didn't see much.
Absolutely.
Feigning of injuries. I didn't see much, rolling around trying to con the referee. I didn't see any of that. I just saw two teams playing football to the best of their ability, and I thought it was fantastic.
I absolutely think so. And also, some people won't like what I'm going to say here as well. But the difference is when Spurs women were losing is the team, the fans are getting behind the team. Whereas our fans, as soon as we go behind, it's, he's useless, take him off, we're awful with this, with that. Whereas there's a lot of patience. But no, absolutely, there's no rolling around. Cracked on with it. There was a lot of respect between both teams, both managers. And ultimately, I think we saw quality on the day. And, absolutely Spurs were wasteful at times, but we create so many opportunities. We gave ourselves that head start, if you like. We're always going to get, take one of those chances. And obviously we did. We wanted to win the game. But I think you're absolutely spot on.
Yeah, 100%. Dave, how you doing, mate?
Good evening. How are we?
Yeah,
good yourself?
Good evening, mate.
I hope people can hear me better today.
Yeah, can hear you well, mate.
Good. Yeah, I'm good. Got a few things to say, but that.
Exactly, and we were just touching on the Spurs women getting to the FA Cup final, which is brilliant news. And they got to play Manchester United in the final, so who knows what might happen? And hopefully, that will kind of spur everybody else on to do well at the football club. Yeah,
no, it's good stuff. I mean, let's hope the men can follow suit in a few years' time.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Excuse the background noise. I've got a rat running a wheel next to me. It was a bit annoying.
That's all right. I'll just keep muting you every so often.
Yeah, that's fine.
So I want to I'll come to you first, Dave, because do you know what? We're going to go through some of the comments because there's quite a lot of comments going on, and I know that Jay put in quite a few. 6 o'clock today was the first one in the chat, so it's good to see him in. Not as early as usual, Jay, but I'll let you off. But yeah, I want to go through some of the comments, and then we'll talk about yesterday's absolute humiliation by Newcastle, which is starting to be a bit of a bogey team and a bogey ground for us, which I'm not really liking. But before we get into that, let's go through some of the comments. Jay has said, if we carry on playing like this, there definitely will not be any Champions League. We need to sign some players. Think it might be the curse of the third kit. We lose every game in that kit. I know, which is really annoying because on Twitter, I put a big long message about how I love that kit and everyone was an idiot.
I love it.
It was a stupid kit and we still lost in it. So anyway, Thomas says, I'm back. He was watching on Twitch last week. Thank you very much, Thomas. He was in Africa, apparently. Interesting. Callum Stubbs is in the house. Evening. Should be back on next week. And then just some love for you, Dave. And Holly said it's a combo of the kit and the kickoff stuff. So, it is what it is. I don't really like this whole thing of curses, but then, when you start to look into it even further, it gets worse and worse. But anyway, whatever. Dave, let's come to you first, mate, and let's just talk overall your thoughts on yesterday's game. Look, I know it's not going to be positive, but I feel like positive Dave has come to an end. Oh, wait, hold on, you're still on mute. Let me unmute you.
There you go. Not come to an end, but I am a realist. You can see there's been improvements this year, no doubt about it. But I tell you what, let me sort this noise out. It's going to drive me mad. I'll come back to me in 2 minutes. Let me fix this.
Yeah, no problem. I kind of guessed where he's going to go, which is that there's been improvements in the Spurs side, but I don't think he's very happy. From what I saw yesterday, he's not very happy with the goals that we have conceded. Harry, what are your thoughts? Looking back 24 hours after the game, I'm a pretty calm person, right? I'm pretty chill. Done. Let's move on. But how do you feel after yesterday's game?
I'm a bit split in a way, Luke, in terms of I think that we mustn't kind of pretend that what we saw yesterday was okay in terms of it was an annihilation with Newcastle's pretty much B team. However, we can't be in 3 or 4 weeks' time going, that's unacceptable, and keep putting these questions and pressure, if you like, on Ange and the players. We've got to put it behind us, and what really matters is how we respond. And this is something that this Tottenham team in recent years, that we're talking 3, 4, 5 years, hasn't been able to do under your Contes, your Nuno's, Mourinho's. When we lose and lose badly, we haven't bounced back. So this for me is a big test. I'm with Dave in terms of if he is worried, and concerned, like or annoyed that the manner we've conceded the goals, because that is it for me in terms of we go 1-0 down, it happens, Van der Ven slips, but then in 88 seconds later, 90 seconds, we concede a second. That for me is more about mentality, and that's frustrating. And I thought we came so far with the mentality, but I seem to crumble a bit. Even at half time, though, I still backed us, to be honest with you, to get back in the game with attacking talent. On paper, I think that team's better than Newcastle's. You exclude their front three, but generally the whole team, the core of the team is stronger. So that's a frustrating thing. But we've got to put it behind us. We've got to move on. We need to focus on that North London derby.
Yeah, look, I'm going to come to Dave in a minute. I completely agree with you. Look, I think I've already over it, to be honest.
It hurts.
Yeah,
we
of course.
that.
Like, I'm watching the game and I'm absolutely fuming. But like, and people are going to kill me for this, it is just a game. And, it's done now, isn't it? We lost. Never mind. Like, let's move on. But I'm also like, I got really annoyed reading social media. So basically all I did was just turn social media off because I got really angry with people blaming like 100% on Ange Postecoglou, 100% again trying to get rid of another manager when we're like way ahead of trajectory where we should be with this kind of manager in this kind of stage that we're at. Anybody that said 5th place by the end of the season would have 90% of the fan base would have snapped your hand off at that point, and yet we're still overreacting about losses, which we said were going to happen at the start of the season, which we said were going to be there. We said do not go, and lose your head. We said we will get drubbed by a couple of teams this season, and realistically, hasn't been many that we've been drubbed by. And so I think that yes, there are some issues, but 100%, I think the players were absolutely dreadful yesterday, and I think there wasn't one single player on the pitch that I thought turned up or showed up. And yes, there are tactical issues. I was reading on Twitter today that actually the potential could be that we should go. We won't because of Ange's style, but we should go to a back three and play with. If we're going to play with those inverted fullbacks, why not play with inverted wing backs and have one less player in midfield, and then have 3 at the back? Because then at least the 3 at the back can spread out and cover the stuff. I want to kind of talk to you all about that in a minute, but
yeah,
I've kind of gone from being calm to being a bit reactionary now, so I'm going to move on to Dave.
Let me do that bit, Luke. That's my bit. So, like I said, I'm a realist. Yeah, we all knew it was going to take a bit of time, but the problems I have, right, is we haven't played well in ages since Villa second half. That's the last time we played well. We scraped a win against Luton. We scraped a win against Forest. We got battered by Fulham. We got battered by Newcastle. So in my head, it's like, we're not playing well. Like, their first goal yesterday came from our attack. We had an attack and we tried to walk it again and tried to walk it into the net. This stupid pass across. Ball gets taken off us for a poor pass. They counter. Unfortunately, Van der Ven slips and Isak slots it away. Now, I just want to touch upon Isak because I talked about Isak last week and how if we're going to sign Werner or Isak, for example, to give you an example of why I say we shouldn't sign Werner, we should sign someone like save the money, someone like Isak. Werner had 2 chances very early on in that game that he fluffed. One, he should have headed it and put it in. He skied it on the volley. The other was that one where the ball was cut across the box and he scuffed at it and shanked it wide. Isak had 1 chance, a few seconds later, buries it. So that's why you don't go and get a Werner. That's why you save the money and you go and get someone better. But my overall problem with Tottenham at the moment is we don't have a plan B. Defensively, we are awful. And I mean, awful. It's the worst I've seen us defensively. We are so open. It's unbelievable. Every time a team attacks, I feel like they're going to score. Every time a team gets a corner against us, I feel like they're going to score. There's no, what's the word? Hope, no faith that we're going to be able to get out of it or to be able to change anything, if that makes sense. So it worries me. Maddison is still in the team, but he's been shocking for weeks. Bissouma is still in the team. He's been shocking for weeks. You know, you have players on the bench that we say we've got this big squad and we've got all these players that we can bring in and we can change things. But at the end of the day, Ange is changing nothing. He's keeping it the same, playing the same team. Yeah, he changes his midfield too, Bentancur, and he changes his, you know, for Sarr or for Bissouma or for Højbjerg or whatever. But the reality of it is we are underperforming so much. The performances are shocking. We're scraping wins against teams we should be thumping, and we're getting thumped by teams we should be winning against. The reality of it is that Newcastle team yesterday was there for the taking with the amount of injuries they've got. It's a perfect game for us to come into that game. Botman's missing as their main centre back. You know, Lascelles is missing. You know, it's a perfect game for us to exploit that. The start of the game, we looked quite good. We were very wide. We stretched them a little bit. They scored one goal. 90 seconds later, I don't know what Pedro Porro was even thinking, volleying the ball back to the goalkeeper, which put Gordon in for the second. But for me, like I said to you, I knew it weren't going to be perfect. And I've said all along, I back Ange. And I said that to you, look, me and you banged that drum to get Ange in at the start of the season. I stand by it. I still think he's a good manager. I still think he's the right manager. But I do think he needs to adapt tactically, because what worked in Scotland and what worked in Japan does not work in the best league in the world, the most competitive league in the world. You have to be able to adapt and change strategy and change tactics. If something isn't working, change it. Do something about it and say, you know what, this isn't really working. For the last few weeks, have been terrible. Maddison has been awful. You dropped for Lascelles, who actually looked quite good when he's come on. Bissouma has been completely off it. You know, bench him. Even bring in Højbjerg, for example. But even when he came on yesterday, it was hopeless. You know, so for me, it's not just about yesterday. Yesterday's performance was tragic, but it's not just about that. We were drubbed by Fulham. We scraped past Forest. We scraped past Luton. The reality of it is we shouldn't be scraping past those teams. We should be putting 2, 3, 4 past them.
Yeah, no, I do agree. And I do agree that, you know, that what you've said about, you know, how he needs to change, I 100% agree with. Like, I'm 1000% still Ange Postecoglou in, and I will be until something disastrous happens, right? Until we finish 8th, 9th, 10th. You know, a lot of people I've been seeing suggesting that we're actually further on than Arteta was at this point. We're further on than Jurgen Klopp was at this point under their reigns. And so realistically, when you look at it like that, my big issue, and Harry, you mentioned this before as well, is like, when did we get so entitled is my issue. And I'm not having a go at you at all, Dave, but like, you know, when did we get to this position where 5th place in the Premier League and pushing for 4th, potentially higher, is suddenly something to be snubbed at? And that the manager should get sacked over, and that it's not good enough, and that's not, you know, what Tottenham are all about, and it's ruining our football club, and some other bullshit like that. Like, when did we get to a point where we got so entitled where that was like a point? But saying that, if you want to be a big club, I also agree that we need to push on, and we need to do, you know, more things to push on from there. And I think that there's a big problem with players that we've got. I still don't think that, you know, we're at a point whereby, okay, we sold our best player to ever play for this football club, hands down. We sold our longest-serving goalkeeper. We got rid of him. You know, we've got rid of other players who were strong, older players within the dressing room who needed going, but again, we got rid of. We've got pretty much a brand new, you know, centre-back pairing. We've got a right-back who's only been there a year and a half. Do you know what I mean? Like, everyone that's in this club is at a point where they are kind of new as such. And so I don't think we should get so reactionary to this point. But I also agree that at some point we have to change. Ange Postecoglou has to change. And that's my worry. Dave, you mentioned about, you know, defending the corners, and we can talk about that a bit more. But if I have to see another corner whereby, you know, the goalkeeper does nothing and no one does anything to try and protect him, like, it's absolutely madness that he doesn't try and command his box. He doesn't try and push anybody out the way. He just stands there and flaps his arms about a little bit.
It's not just the goalkeeper, though. It's like, you look at Scher's goal yesterday. He was just unmarked. Isak did the same thing, and, you know, he was unmarked from a corner. I don't understand what they do and what drills they do in training when it comes to man marking, or whether they're trying to zonal mark or whatever it is. We're bloody terrible at it. You know, we were pretty good from defending corners when we had that old Italian guy. Do you remember? You know, we did quite well. And the contrast is massive, and it's getting to the point where I'm the same as you, Luke. I'm so frustrated that if Vicario is a good goalkeeper, but he does not command his box. If the keeper's not going to command his box, then the players around him need to command it for him and create that security for him, so he's confident enough to be able to come out and claim the ball, or to protect him a little bit more. And that's a frustrating thing for me.
Yeah, definitely. Harry, is there a bird in your house?
No, I think it's outside.
Oh, right. I was about to say, it sounds like there's a bird right next to it.
Well, rats in mine, birds in Harry's.
Exactly, like Dr. Dolittle today. No, I agree, mate. And I think that there are some worrying tactical sides, which surely he is not this stubborn to figure out. Or is it that the players can't do what is being asked? And that bit I don't know, because Harry, I'll come to you. He looked really, 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 really frustrated, understandably, when the Spurs fellow was asking him some questions yesterday. But I want to hear him come up with some answers. It's all right to be, and do you know what? I thought he handled it well, and I thought he looked real fucking pissed off, and I'm glad about it. But you'd think that he would at least come up with some answers to these things. He has to surely realise that we all notice that the corners are a massive issue.
Yeah, I love Ange, and I love what I've seen, throughout the season. But we're not, as you say, getting the answers at the moment. It's we didn't get grip of the game. It has to be, we weren't good enough. It's unacceptable. We apologise. We'll go again, work hard, and we'll be back, and we'll be back stronger. But we don't get that. We get didn't control the game. Newcastle were good. Credit Newcastle, and that's it. He handled it well in the professional side of things, but in that situation, you have to listen. There's two extremes, Luke. You got your Contes in terms of you throw the players under the bus, where they will no longer play for you eventually. I don't think they did towards the end, and then he tries to lose himself the job, and Mourinho comes under that, I think, category as well. But also at the same time, you've got to, for me, criticise the players and everyone associated, if you like, with the club when things aren't going well as well, because she sets the standard. Because the players, we listen to that thinking, well, also maybe different privately, but publicly we didn't get to tell it off. So, whereas for me, it would have been, if I was Ange, I would have gone that, we were awful today. Scoreline should have been bigger. We go again. We've got to put it behind us. So that would have been enough.
You are right about his interviews, and this is one thing I picked up on yesterday when I was listening to his interview on Talk Sport, and he turned around and he was like, there's a lot to reflect on. There's a lot to to learn from this, and we'll go away and we'll learn from it. And I'm thinking, well, what are you going to learn from? Tell us. Let us know what you're going to learn from. Because right now we're seeing the same stuff week in, week out.
It can't be corners, Dave. We've had several weeks of
what I mean. It's you keep saying every time we got a rub in against Fulham, and it's the same script. We got a lot to learn from. We'll go again the next game. We'll come back and then we scrape by. And it's like it hasn't improved. So what have they been learning? Because from what I'm seeing, what they're learning is how not to defend corners. Maybe Eric Dyer's comments rattled him a little bit by saying they don't do any tactical work, but it doesn't look like they are. It doesn't look like they're. Why is Ryan Mason in charge of set pieces? Why is he the guy to has he ever been great at defending set pieces, or even delivering set pieces?
He could probably take a good free kick, I'd imagine.
But that's about it. When you're talking about defending a box, defending zones of a box. If you're playing the zone, you defend different zones per player, and that's how it works. And the player that comes into your zone is your responsibility. Our players are like statues. Newcastle, other players just come into the box, drift off the back of them, free header. It's not good enough, and I don't know what's changed from the beginning of the season, because we weren't actually that bad at the beginning of the season defending corners. It was only a couple of months ago when. There you go. Look, when Vicario got found out, when somebody was putting pressure on him and he flapped at a couple, that all of a sudden it was like, oh, okay, here's a weakness here of Tottenham's. Let's exploit that. And it's like we haven't learned from that.
Yeah, definitely. That's probably the biggest worry for me is that part of set pieces. That kind of what is Vicario's role in those set pieces, because he seems to just stand on his line, and if you're doing that as a goalkeeper, for me, you want to be, and I know I'm not a goalkeeping coach, I'm not a goalkeeper, right? But if I'm standing there, I'm thinking, right, what you want to be is you want to be facing the ball, and you want to be probably in the middle of your 6-yard box minimum, right? To be able to see the flight of the ball and then command whether you're going to come out. You're not too far out, so you can get done by a in-swinging corner. But you're not too close to the goal, so you can come out and collect the ball if you need to. but he doesn't seem to do either. Some form of striker stands on his toes, but none of the players come in and get them out of the way, or he doesn't try and shove them out of the way or do anything. Because if we're seeing players push him and not get impeded for it, then the other way around it can work as well. So he can get a little bit more physical when it comes to that. But he seems to be more interested, and I love Vicari, but he seems more interested in kind of having a laugh and doing stuff for a bit of kind of like camera antics, they call it, than actually standing there and demanding.
I think Nelson's the same. He give and take it, and I like that about him. But do that once the game's done. Like at the end of the day, I know we got away with against Brentford, but him and Maupay going at each other. Maupay scored in the end. Didn't see Maddison score, so Maupay, in my eyes, got the better of him, and Maddison got away with it because on another day we don't win that game. So you've got to be. Vicario does it a lot. Like what he done in Callum Wilson's face. I think it's hilarious. But let's say next season Callum Wilson's back, he's not going to all of a sudden magically forget that. It's not going to forget that. So he's going to always have that against Vicario. So our players have got to be careful. And at a time where Spurs fans were ringing Romero's praise and ringing Van der Ven's praise at St James's Park. I mean, obviously Van der Ven with 3 mistakes is always going to happen, and I don't want to slate him, etc., because he's been really good for us and saved us so many points this season. But Romero, some of his positioning, if you look at that second goal, it all comes down to his positioning. He gets too close to Van der Ven, so Van der Ven feels the need to sprint over and get a block in, and he therefore falls over. So I think got, as Dave says, a lot of questions that need to be answered. It's all well and good saying we're learning, we're trying, but is he going to be saying that next season when we get defeated 4-0 by Newcastle again? And the worrying thing is, and I hope it's not the case, but Ten Hag done well with Man United his first season, maybe even better. Obviously, we know the history of Man United, etc. They come in 3rd place, win the League Cup, and the tactics seemed very, very clear. And you knew what you were getting from United every game. However, in his second season, this season, you just don't know what you're going to get from Man United. I think they're abysmal. If it weren't for Bruno Fernandes' moment of magic, or sometimes Garnacho's moment of magic, over a kick and different bits like that, they'd be in real trouble. And they haven't really got an identity. They don't really have tactics in me, so I don't want to kind of head in that direction in long term in terms of we don't have tactics. Because against Newcastle, for me, we had no real way of playing. When we had the ball, the players didn't know where to go, what to do with it. It's like Postecoglou, I always think, wasn't there. He'd been ill or something, and hadn't been there for 2 or 3 weeks. They had no instructions. It was just go out there, and it felt like a free hit. I don't get that, and I don't understand. And I know you get different opponents, and I know you're tired, but we do very well. Like for example, you have that Villa game where you win 4-0, and that was a really, really good performance. And then 6 days later, you go to Fulham. You can win one and lose one in the same week, but that extreme to the point where we turned over Villa, but got turned over by Fulham, which is very clear that nowhere near the standard of Villa. So questions do need to be answered. But obviously, context, as we've already said, is very important.
Yeah, one of the things, Dave, that Maddison said actually after the game, and again, I felt like he spoke well, but I agree with you, Harry, in the sense of I got annoyed with him last weekend as well. Was it last weekend? No, whenever it was, we played Luton, right? I got really annoyed with him. Sorry, not Luton. It was last weekend against Forest when I got really annoyed because all he kept doing was going to the referee and saying how many fouls Yates had made and trying to get him booked and trying to do that. And I thought, fair enough, that's part of the game, right? I mentioned it about the women's game earlier, that I felt that's one part of it that I enjoyed, that I didn't get to see any of that nonsense go on the pitch. I just got to see them play the game and not trying to con the referee. But I understand in the men's game, everybody's doing it, so you've got to be a part of it. But, he said, one of the key things that he said was everybody went for the easy pass. Everyone went for the easy option. And I understand, Postecoglou's football. We saw a little bit of it towards the end. One touch around the corner, flick it on, that kind of thing. But that only works 1 in 10. Do you know what I mean? So I get what Maddison's saying, and we did find the easy pass. Like when we were looking at clips before we joined Spurs, he was fuming at people for passing the ball backwards. I haven't seen any of that at Spurs. I haven't seen him screaming at anyone for passing the ball backwards.
Is that because he felt a responsibility like the best player, though, at Leicester? Whereas at Spurs, he just feels like I'm fitting in with everyone else.
No, sorry, I was talking about Postecoglou.
Sorry.
Players passing the ball backwards. And Maddison mentioned, that everyone went for the easy option and so on. But I think, he's been shocking recently. And like, I just don't know what to make of it all. But Dave, I can see you want to say something.
Yeah, I was going to say, in terms of Maddison, and I don't know what it is with him. It's like he's come back from injury and he's worried about his body breaking down, or he's worried about, aggravating himself, injury, or he doesn't trust himself, or whatever else. But you are right about he talks about the easy pass. Everyone wants to take the easy path. Everyone wants to do this. Everyone wants to do that. He's just as guilty of that. Because everything he does try has been that bad. It hasn't worked anyway. Man of misplaced passes he played yesterday was unbelievable. He hasn't been good since his injury, since he's come back from injury. So for me, it's like, even his interview yesterday, when he came out yesterday, and he's like, oh, it's a tough one to take. The fans, we're sad for the fans. Well, don't be sad for us. Get your ass on the training ground. Do some fucking work on what keeps going wrong every week. Since Aston Villa away, like I said to you, we've been shocking. I said a few weeks ago on this show, we are destined to be turned over. Then we were turned over by Fulham. I didn't think we were going to get turned over again 3 weeks later by Newcastle. But now I'm like, okay, so we've got Arsenal, City, Liverpool, Chelsea to come. Arsenal score goals for fun. Yeah, they had a blip today. City, Doku, De Bruyne, Haaland, Foden. It's like up against Pedro Porro. It's like, for me, I have no confidence in that. It's like the fullbacks. I think you're right, and I want to touch upon when you said about going to three at the back. It's like that's a good idea, because it gives us that extra layer of protection. Because what's happened at the moment is Udogie and Porro are going up the pitch together. So it's not like one's back, one's forward. They're not like that. They're just both gone. Then what happens is we get caught, which is exactly what happened with Isak's third goal, with Newcastle's third goal that Isak scored yesterday. One long ball over the top of Van der Ven. He's in his own half. He's off. There's one centre back chasing him. Where are the forwards? Where are our fullbacks? They're in the opposition box because they're both too high up the pitch. So it's like something has to change. And I don't want to be too harsh on Ange, because it is a new job, it's a new environment. He's getting the players built into his system and everything else. And he probably doesn't have all the players he wants to have yet, because you can't do it all in one window. But when things go wrong, it's his responsibility. He's paid enough money to recognise what we all see. And that's what annoys me. We all see what's happening. We can all see tactically the way we're set up is causing that first half. Newcastle had about 16 shots or something stupid. We can all see as fans, like, what is going on? Tactically, we look awful. Something's got to change, a formation change or something. But it's like in his head, he's like, nah, mate, we play how we play. It's like, that's all he says. I'm not going to change anything. I'm not going to change the way I play. But what happens when teams suss out the way you play and suss out how to beat you in that way? And that's what's happening.
Yeah, definitely. The big issue for me is in that department that we've discussed is as you say, there is a tactical element, right? And there is something, I don't know what it is. I assume it's a midfielder has to come and cover their position. I assume that's what that is. But whether players aren't doing that or not, but all that happens is it's like suicide at times, because the fullbacks bomb on. And from what I gather, a midfielder such as Basuma has to come in and then cover. But then he's not tactically inept or physically inept to be, a left back or a right back or whoever it is that's covering that position. So you've got a half a player playing in that position. If he really can be asked to get back, which at times it looks like he can't. And so I agree with you. Like, that's when you say, well, if you went to a three at the back, okay, and let's say you left out a Bissouma or a Bentancur, right, one of them, and you put a centre back instead. All that happens is Pedro Porro and Udogie, sorry, my screen's small, go like this, and then the centre backs just go like this and just step across to cover, so that you have probably Van der Ven in the middle because he's the fastest, and then you have Romero and probably Dragashin. And then they just split across and make a wide back three to cover when they bomb forward. And then what you could also have is you could potentially have a Kuti. I'm changing my mind now. Potentially he could play in the middle and step forward a little bit more as and when the fullbacks are back. So when the fullbacks are back, you could go into a four with him playing slightly further forward as a kind of a very deep line defensive midfielder. Like, there's loads of different ways you could do it tactically. But as you say, Dave, the big issue is, like, I want to know why he's not changing and why it's not working at the moment. Like, do you get what I mean, Harry? Like, why is it that these things aren't working, and what are the players not doing that we should be seeing?
Yeah, I don't know. In terms of, and Dave's already alluded to it, the problem here isn't just Newcastle. It is in terms of the result, but we haven't, played well. You had that Villa second half, but before that, we're talking like Newcastle at home when we beat them 4-1 was the last good performance. I mean, football is a results-based business, but it always felt like a matter of time before we were turned over. We got that at Fulham. Me and Dave both sat on the show and went, we think we're going to get one or two more batterings before the end of the season. I don't think either of us thought necessarily it would be Newcastle or be 4-0, but we knew it was coming at some point based on what we've seen. I don't get why it works. And I didn't really think of a back three before, Luke, but I think it's quite a smart idea in terms of Romero can overlap as a centre-back. You have, 2-3 back, when players counter-attack. Because at the moment, we just look every time an opposition attacks, I'm thinking goal. Or Vicario stop, because we're in trouble. We're relying on Mickey van der Ven's pace. But he's falling over at the moment, against Newcastle. So you can't rely on that. Whereas you have three defenders back, it's okay. I think positioning is a huge problem. But again, I look at that Newcastle game, and that's the second game along with Fulham this season where we've had no real identity. And whatever you think of Ange Postecoglou, right, we can all agree, whether he's won, lost or drawn in his career, there's an identity. There wasn't Celtic, even at their worst days. You knew what you were going to get. And we often do. But I looked at it against Newcastle. We had a lot of the ball. We'd done absolutely nothing with it. It was all panicked. It was all rushed. And players actually looked lost. And players were looking at each other. Nobody had a clue what was going on. And the last time I did feel like that was last season. And actually, funny enough, at St James's Park. So that is a slightly worrying thing. And I don't like to get carried away. But, we've got 14 days before the North London derby. That is enough time to work on tactics, to work on formation, to work on positioning, to work on set pieces. All those things can be done in 14 days. Arsenal done it with 13 days. When they went over to Dubai and worked on set pieces. I know, obviously, at the blip today, they've been so strong. That's the first loss in 2024. Been so strong ever since they lost to Fulham and West Ham in a week.
Look, can you pull up that comment? I think it was David Clark. About the players. Yeah, so this one here, David, whilst I agree with you about not having the ability to keep possession of the ball whilst transition, it's going to sound like really harsh, but if your players can't do that, don't play that way. The reality of it is Ange Postecoglou is paid a lot of money to be a manager of a top 6 Premier League club at the end of the day. We don't have poor players. We don't have terrible players. We don't have players that are useless. We spent a lot of money on, some of these players, Bentancur, Bissouma, Van der Ven, Udogie, Porro. It's not that they're incapable of Maddison, for example. It's not that they're incapable of doing it, but if they're not doing it, he has to be able to adapt and change, because if he doesn't adapt and change, the same thing's going to keep happening. The player's confidence must be shot to bits at the moment. So, if it's not working, it's his job to switch it up.
Yeah, definitely. For those listening, sorry, I didn't see the comment. It says it's nothing to do with tactics. It's about players not having the ability to keep possession of the ball when in transition. Most of our players are incapable of physically stopping losing possession. Look, it is what it is at the end of the day. All we need to do now is we need to focus on what's coming up, and that's North London derby. And, the only saving grace is that Arsenal did lose today. It's in our hands now to stop them from potentially winning the league. So every focus has to be on that. And, I'm really intrigued to see, what happens. Last time we played Arsenal, it was an open game. Last time we played Arsenal, we caught them napping. Can, the same happen again? I'm really not sure. But look, next week we will talk about North London derby. The whole show will be focused on the build-up to that game. And we'll do our full preview next Sunday. But let's move on and let's talk a little bit about the score prediction table, because it's slowly becoming my worst feature that I ever created, because the scores were as follows. I went for a 2-1 Spurs win. Winnie went for a 2-1 Newcastle win. Dave went for a 3-3 draw. Callum went for a 3-2 Spurs win. And Harry went for a 3-2 Newcastle win. So both Harry and Winnie get 1 point. The rest of us get 0 points because they predicted Newcastle win. And now Winnie has clawed it back to 2 behind me now. So I'm still in the lead with 30, but I haven't got a point in ages. Winnie's on 28. Dave and Harry on 21. And Callum on 19 points. It's all heating up towards the end of the season. I need to do something because Winnie is catching me. But talking about catching people, absolutely nobody is catching Dave at the top of the FPL rankings. Let me just load it all up and we'll go through that. So we all enter an FPL group with some listeners and whoever else wanted to join. And Dave, well, as of right now, is not top, but it could be depending on his own scores because they haven't updated the app. Where are you on yours, Dave, as of today?
To be fair, it's close. I am still top. I've still got 3 players to play and more points to add. So it's close to the top, but I'm pretty certain I'm still going to win it.
I love that. I'm probably about 100 points behind you guys in 6th place, but I am in 6th. And we drop all the way down to 10th until we see Winnie, who's on 1,706 points. We then drop down to 14th to find Harry Scarf, and then Callum in 16th position. So looks like Dave might be the runaway winner at the FPL standings. But you are being taken all the way by Juan Sancho and a Shan Mohit. So who knows what might happen come the end of the season.
I already know.
Brilliant. Right. Oh, I know what I was going to talk about really quickly is that Jay did ask earlier about Tuesday nights. Here we go. What's going on for Tuesday nights with FIFA? We should be back this Tuesday, 8 o'clock, again on YouTube to play some more Pro Clubs. Last week was probably our worst week. We went from having the best week ever the week before, where we went 5 unbeaten. And then this week, we barely won a single game, apart from the last 2. So we'll be back. It was a bit of arguments this week. We'll be back this week, 8 o'clock on Tuesday, so make sure you check that out. We might need to make some sign-ins soon. We might need Dave to come in and...
Yeah, I know. I've been meaning to. I've been really busy. I mean, I'm busy this week, but potentially next week I can make my debut and save you all.
Exactly. But we were hoping to get promoted to Division 2, but we didn't make it. So we'll try again this week. We've actually got a practice session tonight. So Winnie should be back on Tuesday. He's in Lisbon at the moment, so he should be back.
Yeah, I know. He accidentally rang me earlier. And I was on the phone. Just hear him talking in the background. I was like, hello?
Amazing. But that pretty much wraps us up, for what was an exciting weekend for the Spurs women team and an absolutely abysmal weekend for the Spurs men's team. We can't have it one way. We've got to have it, both ends of the spectrum. To be honest, exactly. The only league saving grace is that the Spurs women did reach the FA Cup semi-final today. So, big up to them who face Manchester United. I think it is on the 12th of May. Mr. Harry Scarf, thank you very much for joining us again. How can everybody find you?
Yeah, thank you very much, Luke. You can find me there, Harry Scarf 22, but you got my own channel, Scarfy Spurs Talk. Match Reaction done very well, so thank you for that. And we've got the weekly show tomorrow, 7:45 p.m, joined by Billy T, a couple other people from Spurs Twitter, and also joined my Newcastle fan and content creator Adam Pearson. So it should be a good one, getting into it, talking Spurs women, and of course the Newcastle and Spurs game. In what was quite spineless, I think, from Spurs. But it's what it is. Also, you can follow me, Harry Scarf, 22 on TikTok. I made a video laughing at Arsenal, and that went down very well with the Arsenal fans. So very unpopular at the moment. So all I can say is good evening, and make sure to subscribe to the channel.
Yeah, thanks, mate. Really appreciate that. And Dave, good to see you back on again. How you do? How you doing? I already know.
I am good, mate. But everyone can
find you.
Yeah, the usual place at Park Lane Pod Dave on Twitter. Or at Park Lane Pod on Twitter. I do answer the channel's tweets, and I do tweet from there quite regularly. If you know me by now, I don't like to hold my tongue, and I'm quite opinionated. So if you have an opinion you disagree with, by all means, come challenge me on the Park Lane Pod Twitter. Let's have a conversation about all things Tottenham. And as good as I am, that Villa won today, it couldn't have happened against a better team. So, yeah.
Exactly, mate. Exactly. And, more importantly than following me, which you can do at Luke_Parklane on Twitter, is make sure you are subscribing to Harry's channel. Make sure you're subscribing to this channel. Make sure you're liking, you're watching all the way through, you're doing all of that stuff. We have some really, really good people that follow us every single week, and I appreciate every single one of you. The people that I see on YouTube, you're absolutely amazing. The people that I don't see but listen to this podcast on all podcast platforms, you are absolutely outstanding. So thank you all very, very much for tuning in. look, we'll be back next week to talk about the North London derby, Sunday night, 7 p.m. And we will be live on YouTube on Tuesday night to play some more pro clubs on FIFA. But until then, a massive come on, you Spurs.
Come on, you Spurs.